Well, hello there. My name is Jennifer Phillips, and I'm really glad to kind of be with you today through video. I've never videoed my story before, so this is going to be interesting. I hope it turns out okay. I hope I'm as funny as I would be as if I were talking to you guys face to face. But I really is an honor to be asked to be with the Beacon groups, and thanks for letting me do a video. As much as I'm committed to Anna Nash and the vision of Beacon, waking up at 3 a.m. you wouldn't have gotten my best. So I hope this goes okay. Well, to start my story, I need to go back a ways, and I don't know if any of you have heard of an author and psychologist named Dan Allender, but several years ago I went to a conference in Birmingham where he spoke, and he was talking about identity and name, the importance of your name. And he asked a question. He said, when was the time in your life where you lost your name? And what he meant was everybody has a time, a really defining moment in their life that changed how they view themselves in relation to the world, in relation to other people. And as soon as he said that, I knew exactly what mine was. And it was back in the 5th grade. I was 10 years old, and it was the first day of school. I was at a new school. We'd moved from Florida to Tennessee. And up until this point, I was a confident, spunky little girl. I thought I could do anything. You couldn't tell me there was something I couldn't do. I used to embarrass my sister, actually, because we lived on this cove and some boys would go out and play basketball, and I would go jump in with them and say, do you think that girls can't play basketball as good as boys? And of course she was like 11, so I was humiliating her by doing that. But that was just the kind of confidence that I had. So new school, very first day. And this story, it's a funny story, but actually it's a sad story too. So my school in Florida had this thing called the Gifted program that I was a part of. It was just like an accelerated program or extension kind of program. And so my very first day of this school in Tennessee, guys, I don't know why I did this, but very innocently, as the teacher's explaining how the year's going to go, I raise my hand and I say, excuse me, are there any classes for gifted students here? And everybody just kind of looks at me. It was like crickets. And I didn't really know why, and I think she kind of just said no and moved on. But shortly after, dismissed to recess, go outside, and nobody talks to me. And these little groups are forming, and these girls are whispering, and I'm like, what's going on? And I remember one girl said to me, why did you say that? Why did you ask that question? And I didn't know there was anything wrong with what I asked. But that started 4.5 years of being left out, of some bullying, of some pretty intense rejection. And if you think about those years, you think, oh, that's so long ago. But if you think about those years, 10 to 14 are such crucial identity forming years. And as a result, gone was that 10-year-old girl who was so confident and thought she could do anything. And in her place became a girl whose worst fear was rejection. So, fast forward a lot of years, and our family, so at this point I have a husband named Brian. We've worked for Campus Outreach for 15 years, and so for 10 of that we were in the States. And then we decided to move to work with Campus Outreach in Australia. I'm sorry, be jealous. That's okay. But anyway, we're getting ready to move, and we have 3 kids. They were 7, 5, and 3 at the time. And my husband said, hey, you should start a blog, and so that friends and family can keep up with what we're doing. And I was like, no, blogs are dumb. Like, that's the first thing that I said. And I was like, I don't read blogs. Why would anybody want to read my blog? And he's like, no, really, like, you love to write, you're good at writing, and people would love it. You should do this. And so I thought about it, and I was like, well, I do love to write. That's kind of what I'd always been good at. And so I thought, well, my compromise was that I would start a private blog. So it was only for people who I'd invited. So it was close friends and family. And I thought, look, this is safe. These are people that I know love me very much. And a bonus would be that if I didn't like Australia very much, I could talk about that, and it wouldn't be for all the world to see. So, because I'm a great missionary. Anyway, so I started this private blog, and the first couple years of being overseas were really emotional. And so I would write, and I would write about the hilarious things about living over here. I would write about driving on the wrong side of the road and getting lost and spiders the size of my head in my bedroom and things like this. And but then I would write about the heartache too, and the longing for what was, and the homesickness, and trying to fit in. And so sometimes people would respond, and sometimes they wouldn't. And I would pour my heart out on the computer screen and wake up to no comments. And I would tell Brian, I'm done with this. I can't write anymore. I cannot be vulnerable like this. I can't handle the rejection. Because that's what it felt like, was rejection. But he would continue to encourage me, and I would get my courage up to write again, because I kind of had to. It became this cathartic way for me to process my feelings, not just with myself, but with the Lord, and to see what was He doing in my life. So fast forward a couple of years, and God opened the doors for us to adopt a little girl from China. And this was a miraculous thing. We kind of had always wanted to adopt, but adoption is really, really difficult in Australia. Australia has the lowest rate of adoption in the world because of really strict adoption laws. And so when we moved to Australia, we thought, well, that's the end of that dream. We're not going to be able to adopt. But we found out that we could use our American citizenship and go through the American system. So it was even though it was what we wanted, it was this heavy, heavy step of obedience, because there were all the fears of, we're going to mess up our family, and what are we doing, and we're just getting settled, and how can we turn things upside down again? But the Lord really clearly showed us this is what He wanted to do. So we got matched with a baby, and Christmas 2013, we're getting ready to travel to China to get Leon Yongwei, who we would name Lucy. And again, a couple weeks before we left, Brian says, you should make your blog public so that other people, like our Australian friends, want to follow our story. More people want to follow our story, and while we're in China, and see pictures of when we get Lucy. And I thought, well, I'm not making that blog public, no. But I thought, what I can do is I'll just make another blog called Bringing Lucy Home, and it'll just be for when we're in China. And that'll be fine. It's just about our trip there. That's safe. No room for rejection. Everybody loves adoption stories, and it'll be fine. And so I even wrote in my private blog, I said, here's the link for when we're in China, but don't worry, a couple weeks, I'll be back to this blog. God had other plans. So when we were in China, we got our little Lucy. And some kids attach right away. Some kids cling to the new adoptive mom and dad just because they're terrified. But Lucy had the opposite reaction, and she rejected us. She had spent the first 15 months of her life virtually alone in a crib for most hours of the day. And so she was sensory deprived, and she was terrified, and she didn't want have anything to do with us. And so she would literally lean as far back as she could away from us. She didn't want us to hold her. She would scream, scream, scream. And so whereas I thought I was going to be writing in this new blog about, oh, we got Lucy today, and here are the pictures, and it's so wonderful. And instead, we're dealing with this rejection. And God started giving me these metaphors of my relationship to Him as it was playing out with Lucy, and as I saw her push us away when we loved her and wanted to give her the very, very best, but all she knew was isolation. And so she would push us away and push us away. And I was seeing how I did the same thing to the Lord all the time, even though He knew it was best for me. And so I wrote about these things. And as we're in China, the number of people that followed my blog grew and grew and grew. And I thought, wow, this is amazing. Like, I really hope God's using this. And so it got time for us to leave. And because Lucy had to land on U.S. soil to get automatic U.S. citizenship. So our whole family had gone to China, but the plan was Brian and the other 3 kids would go back to Australia, and Lucy and I would head on to America for a quick 10-day trip. She would get her automatic U.S. citizenship, I'd get her U.S. passport, we would be back on our way to Australia. And again, God had other plans. So Lucy and I go to America. And in the airport, I said to my husband, I said, well, I guess I'm done writing this blog. I mean, you know, we've adopted Lucy, we're done. There's not really anything else to say. And he said, oh yeah, I guess so. God had other plans. So Lucy and I go to America, and due to an unprecedented, crazy, never happened before, immigration nightmare, Lucy's passport application was denied. And then subsequently her U.S. citizenship was denied. And so what that meant was that she and I were stuck half a globe away from the rest of our family indefinitely. And nobody knew what to do. And so our agency was scrambling, and politicians were scrambling, and lawyers, and immigration, and every day was this fight of what in the world are we going to do? Like, how are we going to get home? And I kept writing, and it was more out of a desperation of, please pray, like, we don't know what to do. But it was also me processing my fight for faith during this time, saying, God, you know, we stepped out and trusted you, and what are you doing? Like, how dare you do this to us? Like, we obeyed you, and here I have this little girl that doesn't even want me, and the kids that do want me are on the other side of the world. Like, why would you do this to me? And so I was writing about my fight for faith, and at the same time seeing, as I continued to pursue Lucy, see her being transformed and changed. And it's so paralleled what was happening with me and the Lord, because just as Lucy would push me away, I was pushing away the Lord, saying, leave me alone, like, stop it. And He kept wooing me and loving me and faithfully drawing me to Himself. And so I wrote about these things, and the numbers on the blog grew by the thousands and thousands. And I said, okay, Lord, what are you doing here? Like, this is so much bigger than me, obviously. Well, after 53 of the longest days of my life, 53 days, the Lord finally opened the door for Lucy and I to go home. And we got home and started our new normal. And I had 2 decisions to make, among lots of other things. But the first was, am I going to keep writing this public blog now that the story is over, the hype is over, and it would just be me sharing my heart in the day-to-day? You know, it's funny, when I was in the States and all the craziness was going on and I was writing, I wasn't afraid to write. The fear of rejection wasn't there, because I was so desperate for the Lord to do something. And I was also so aware that there was a bigger story at play. But when we got back and that story had died down, and it would be more of me in the day in, day out faith struggles, not because of some crazy crisis, but just because it's hard to obey sometimes. Did I want to keep putting myself out there for anyone to read? and sit in here? Or was I going to go back to my safe private blog? My second question was, should I write a book? And when the blog was so popular, I had countless people say, you should write a book, you should write a book, you should write a book. And it had always been a dream of mine to write a book because I love writing so much, but I thought, what do I write about? And I don't have an audience. Well, here the Lord gave me a story, and He gave me an audience. And not only that, but He had used our story in such huge ways in people's lives to think, what would He want to do on a bigger, grander scale? So I ended up answering both of those questions. I, in fear and trembling, said, okay, I'm going to keep this blog public, and I'm going to keep writing and sharing my heart. And then I said, yes, I'll write this book. And I'm telling you, I cannot tell you the number of times I almost quit when I was writing it. I mean, there was one night, literally, I'm ashamed to say, I threw the computer across the room. I did. Because I'm writing, I'm saying, I'm not good at this. Everybody's going to hate this. And it's not like I'm writing a fiction story. This is my life. So if they hate it, maybe they hate me. So I can't write this. And my dad encouraged me, and my husband encouraged me. And so I would keep going. And I self-published through Crossbooks, which was a division of Lifeway, because I wanted to get the story out pretty quickly. It released in March of this year. First, it was debuted on the Gospel Coalition's website, which was unbelievable that happened. And then it debuted in March, debuted at #1 on Amazon for its genre, which I could not and still can't believe. It's like, what in the world? 3 weeks after the book debuted, my publisher announced that they were closing. Seriously, Lord? Like, what in the world are you doing? But it was like He was saying, Jennifer, like, how much of your identity is based on how well this book does? Yeah, I thought so. Let me take this away for a little while. And it was very cruel, but very necessary. Just to humble me and say, this is not about me. It's not about me. He opened the doors for the book to get back into publication. And not only that, but the largest Christian bookstore chain in Australia picked it up so that it's now selling nationwide in Australia, in Anti-Adoption Australia. And it's crazy because, when we started talking about adoption and decided to go forward with it, one of our prayers was that God would use our story to open up the conversation about adoption in Australia, to somehow could we be a part of the conversation to change these adoption laws, to help these families that wait 8 and 10 years to adopt, and to help these 15,000 foster children that would never get a chance to be adopted under Australia laws. And here I have an adoption book in bookstores across Australia. And not only that, but that book gave me credibility to now be included in this official review of the adoption laws. I'm getting to be a part of this conversation to submit potential changes to the laws because I have credibility because of this book, of a story that I didn't want to begin with, but I begged God to take away. Is so much more. This is so much more than just about me. So, and the Lord is actually, I just got a contract to write a second book with a publisher and a 30-day adoption, a devotional book for adoptive families. It'll come out in 2017. And I'm just blown away by what God has done. I still blog every week at jenniferphillipsblog.com, and I'll tell you, every week I fight that fear of rejection as I'm writing, and I push post with fear and trembling, and then I just want to hide. I just want to put the pillow over my face and hide, and I think, oh, will they like it, will they like it, will they like it? And I feel like every week that the Lord says, Jennifer, this is not about you. This is not about you. I'm giving you these words. I have a reason for them. This is not about you. And, as I face that 10-year-old girl in me, every single time I write, and I see and I still feel like that girl who's being pushed out and rejected and whispered about. And for me, it is such a gift that the Lord has pushed me kind of into more of this public platform for me to have to say, no, that is not my name. That is not who I am. And God has given me a new name, and He calls me His. And my identity is secure in Him, no matter if people love or hate my writing. It's not about me, and that's okay. And I have to tell you, the sweetest thing happened. My 10-year-old son, Andrew, he said in his class they were doing something where the class was like guessing what occupation each other's parents did or something like that. And he got to say, my mom is an author. And I loved that so much, not so because it sounded like I did something big and cool, which partly it was, but the main thing was I love that my kids have gotten to see me face my fears and push through it and do it scared, trusting the Lord to fulfill His purposes even though I am trembling. And they knew that I was so scared to write the book. They know that I'm scared to write my blog. But for them to see me do it anyway, I pray that that ministers to them and encourages them to do the same thing. So I just want to encourage you, to press through your fears, those identity issues, when the Lord is asking you to do something that feels so vulnerable, to just remember that He has such a greater story in mind, and that His story is so much bigger than we could ever imagine. So thank you for letting me be with you. And if you guys want to get a copy of my book, Bringing Lucy Home, you can get it online at Amazon or Barnes & Noble or Books A Million, all those online. Or you can request it at any bookstore and they'll get it for you. I think there are copies at some Lifeway stores. And then my blog is jenniferphillipsblog.com. So anyway, great to meet you guys, kind of. I hope I get to meet you in person someday. Oh, let me tell you, I'm going to be doing a book signing on Tuesday, December 8th. We're going to the States for Christmas. Yay! Tuesday, December 8th in Birmingham at Ashley Max at the River Chase location. I'll be there with Lucy and my family, and there'll be books for sale, and I would love to meet you. So come get some strawberry cake there because it's delicious. Thanks, guys. Bye.